Seawald gets the save, the first for him on the season as the D-backs sweep the Cincinnati Reds. But can they keep it going against the red-hot Baltimore Orioles?
You are Locked On Diamondbacks, your daily Arizona Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You're listening to who? The always charismatic host of this podcast, Millard Thomas. I'm a multimedia journalist and I'm a graphic designer, so please go check out my website, millardthomas24.myportfolio.com. On there you can see all my latest work, from my packages to my articles to my photos and my graphic design. If you want to see more content by me, just follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for my personal account, or look up Locked On Diamondbacks both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. On today's show, we'll talk about the D-backs sweeping the Cincinnati Reds. We'll preview the next series against the Baltimore Orioles, and we'll talk about the biggest positive surprises from the D-back season so far. But before we get into any of that, thank you for making Locked On Diamondbacks your first listen every day. I would not be able to do this podcast without you, my loyal listeners, sharing, subscribing, reviewing, doing all that so I could do this podcast for you. Thank you. It's free. It's available on all platforms. So please continue to tell your friends. One of those platforms is YouTube. So please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. Our goal is to hit 2,000 subs by the All-Star break. So once again, please hit subscribe to Locked On Diamondbacks on YouTube. But now let's talk about that big D-back series finale, because they were able to complete the sweep of the Reds and get a 4-game winning streak. D-backs are now just 2 games below 500, 15-20 on the season. Still not the best record, 9-10 on the road, but they are starting to play a little bit better here and there. This was still not the best game from the D-backs. Still want to see a better offensive performance. Still want to see a better performance from the bullpen. But at least the D-backs are starting to maybe turn a corner just a little bit. I think it's still too early to say that, especially when you sweep a team that is on an 8-game losing streak. I think the next test, which we'll talk about later, against Baltimore, will be the real test for the D-backs as to whether we want to say or not that they are turning the corner. So we'll hold our judgment and preview the next series against Baltimore in segment number 2. But for the D-backs in this series finale, they did just enough once again to get the win, just like game number 2. Game number 2, the offense did just enough to win it, and the bullpen late in that game also very shaky. Kevin McGinkle tried to blow the game yesterday, but thankfully Joe Mantiply came in and saved it in this game after Slade Ciccone had himself a pretty good day pitching. 5.1 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 3 hits. I said on the podcast, I believed Slade was going to have a good day because in 2 of his 3 starts, he was very good this season. His one bad start was against the San Diego Padres, and I did not think this Reds offense can match up with what the Padres did. So I believed Slade was going to have a good day. He dominated the Reds last year when they were in the middle of the wild card race. So I was not going to be surprised if Slade did it once again. And once again, he did have a good start against the Reds, but it was the bullpen that tried to blow the day for Slade and this D-backs team, because we know this D-backs bullpen has been shaky all year, especially when the D-backs are down a run or up a run. You can't expect this D-backs bullpen to preserve a lead or keep you within the ball game. And once again, the D-backs with a 3-run lead, the pen wasted no time to allow the Reds to top the game, because Logan Allen came in after Slade Ciccone and was just horrendous. 4 hits, 3 earned runs allowed. He gave 2 inherited runners to Ryan Thompson because Thompson came in, tried to preserve the game. There was a man on second and third, and not even Ryan Thompson was able to preserve the game. He gives up a hit, and the Reds were able to tie it up against the D-backs. And so now you're expecting the D-backs to come through with some late game clutch offense, which we know has been a big problem for them this season, right? How many times have we talked about it on this podcast? When games are late and close, 7th inning or later, within 1 run, The D-backs have been so bad in those situations this year. They have not come through in the clutch, but in this game, they were able to do that. Gurriel, big double in the sixth. Well, that's before, the D-backs, that was before the bullpen blew the game, but still want to mention it. Gurriel, big double in the sixth because it was still late in the game. It was still late enough in the game for me because the D-backs still don't do great in those innings. Suarez, big sacrifice fly in the sixth as well to give the D-backs a 2-run lead. Then Christian Walker in the seventh had himself a big single as well. That was Christian Walker came through in that situation, 2 outs with a runner in scoring position. We've seen Christian Walker so many times not come through in that situation. So it was really cool to see him do it. But again, that was pre the D-backs bullpen blowing the lead and the game being tied. But those were still very clutch hits to give the D-backs that 3-run lead. But afterwards, after the D-backs bullpen already blew it, it was Corbin Carroll in the 8th inning that came through with a big single to score Tucker Barnhart. So what the D-backs offense did in the 6th was clutch. What they did in the 7th was clutch. And most importantly, what Corbin Carroll did in the 8th, supremely clutch. Carroll has been way better as of late. What is that now? 8 of his last 9 games, I think he now has a hit. He was struggling for most of this game at the plate, but came through in the biggest moment, which we haven't seen enough from Corbin Carroll this season. That clutch factor, Corbin Carroll actually driving in runs. We have not seen that from him a lot this season. So it was so good to see Corbin Carroll actually come through in a big situation and deliver the game-winning knock. And then, of course, in the 9th inning, Paul Sewald comes in and shuts the door after a very clean 8th inning from Kevin Ginkel. That's kind of where my question is with Torey Lovullo when looking at this game. We know he threw out Paul Sewald in game number 1. Maybe it was just because he wanted to give Paul Sewald some MLB action. It was a non-save opportunity. Maybe because it was a low-pressure moment, it was easy to get Paul Sewald in the game and get him, just used to MLB pitching once again. But moving forward, especially in this next series, D-backs have to go back to what worked last year in the postseason with their 7-8-9. Ryan Thompson, Kevin Ginkel, Paul Sewald has to be your 7th, 8th, and 9th in your bullpen. Don't think about it. Don't try to get cute with it. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. If you're Torey Lovullo, go with your 3 best relievers. If you have a lead after 6 innings, it should go Ryan Thompson, Kevin Ginkel, Paul Sewald to close out the game because that is your best 3. And then one final note from this series finale. The switch of Jock Peterson and Lourdes Gurriel seems to be working out big time. Like I mentioned, Gurriel, big knock in the 6th inning. Jock Peterson, big home run in this game. 3 for 5, 2 runs scored and RBI. I like Jock at the number 3. I like Gurriel in the number 5 slot. I think it makes more sense for both of them moving forward in the lineup with the way both of them are swinging the bat right now. D-backs offense does just enough to get the sweep of the Cincinnati Reds. Paul Sewald comes in and shuts the door, saves the day after a shaky bullpen performance. But regardless, D-backs get the sweep, and now they face one of their toughest opponents of the season in the Baltimore Orioles, which we'll preview next. You know that instant confidence boost you get from an outfit that makes you look really good? That's what I get with Stitch Fix. Easily upgrade your wardrobe this year with a professional stylist that helps you find new on-trend favorites that will work for you. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And they send 5 just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and pro styling advice. I keep what works and I send back the rest. My stylist always sends just right pieces and the fit is on point. It's like they have a style ESP. I don't know how they do it, but they just get me. Stitch Fix makes it so easy. I don't like to shop and they save me that time and effort. Plus, I get the outfits that make me look and feel really good. And if you don't love something, just send it back. Shipping returns and exchanges are always free. Style that makes you feel good and look good. Get started today at stitchfix.com/MLB and get $20 off your first fix. That's stitchfix.com/MLB for $20 off. Stitchfix.com/MLB must redeem within 7 days of sign up. All right, all right, all right. Let's get back into the Locked on Diamondbacks podcast. And if you like the show, please follow me on Twitter at CareerThomas24 for the personal account. Look up Millard.Thomas123 on Instagram for the personal account, or look up Locked on Diamondbacks both Twitter and Instagram for the podcast handle. But now let's get back into the podcast and let's talk about this next series that the D-backs face, because next they have to go against the Baltimore Orioles, and that will not be an easy test for the Arizona Diamondbacks because the Orioles are currently one of the best teams in Major League Baseball. At the time of me recording this podcast, they are 24-12, and the Orioles are one of the not just best teams in baseball, but they're also one of the youngest teams in baseball. There's been a lot of comparisons between the D-backs and Orioles the last couple of years because both of the two teams have been really young. Both of the two teams have been on the rise, but it's the Orioles who you look at how they're playing this season and you can't help but feel like that's what the D-backs should be doing. You look at their young studs, specifically the two pillars in their lineup, the Adley Rutschmans, the Gunnar Hendersons of the world. Those two have crushed it for Baltimore this year. And you can't say the same for the D-backs youngsters. Adley Rutschman, 318 average, over 800 OPS. Gunnar Henderson, over a 900 OPS, double-digit home runs. Both of those guys have been absolutely elite this season. But you look at the D-backs, Corbin Carroll having one of the worst seasons in Major League Baseball for an offense player. Gabriel Moreno has not taken the step forward. And when you look at that Orioles team, you look at that Orioles offense, you can't help but feel like those two young stars doing what they're doing is just propelling everything in that organization and just straight up raising the ceiling of that organization. And I also think it rubs off on a lot of the other players in that lineup. I think a big reason why you see some of the youngsters like a Colton Krauser play so well is because he looks to his left and his right, and there's other youngsters around his age also dominating. Adley Rutschman is 26. Gunnar Henderson is 23. So when you're Colton Krauser at 24, you feel empowered because everyone is young around you and everyone around you is also dominating. So I just feel like that rubs off on you if you're a Colton Krauser who also has over a 900 OPS this season. This Orioles team is absolutely stacked when you look at their lineup, and it's all dudes under the age of 30. I like the mix of veterans in this D-backs lineup, but so far this season, both their youngsters and veterans haven't been that good. The Eugenio's, the Gurriels, the Carrolls, we're just not getting enough production from some of the best players in our lineup, while the Orioles are getting maximum production from a lot of players in their lineup. So the D-backs offense is going to need to do a better job of matching what this Orioles team can do offensively, because that Orioles team offensively has been absolutely elite this season. The Orioles second in runs, second in OPS, and first in home runs. It's going to take a lot for this D-backs team to match what the Orioles are doing this year. This is potentially going to be a high scoring series for at least Baltimore, because that's what they've done all season. And the D-backs are going to have to try and match that. The Orioles are this team on the ascent, and the D-backs have not been ascending at all this season. And so this could be the series where the D-backs finally plant their flag and say, this is where we turn our season around. The Orioles are the team that we should be. We're the team coming off a World Series appearance. We're the team with some of the best young talent in the sport. Why are we not playing on the level that Baltimore is? That's the question that the D-backs should be asking themselves. And I think this series could be a perfect opportunity for the D-backs to finally start turning that corner. And one of the players that I'm looking at to potentially step up in this series is the Lourdes Gurriel, who we've talked about a ton on this podcast. being elite the first 20 games, not being so good the last 20. Well, Gurriel in his career has absolutely dominated the Baltimore Orioles. When you look at Gurriel's career stats against them, he has a career 338 average and a 972 OPS against the Orioles. So would love to see him come through once again. Gurriel, a guy who used to play in Toronto, a large sample size against Baltimore as a dude who used to play in the AL East. So Gurriel, very familiar with the Baltimore organization. So want to see if he can step up and maybe put a couple of smashes over the fence in this series, because the D-backs could definitely use some home runs. When again, we're going against the number one home run hitting team in the American League, the D-backs are probably going to have to bring some pop into Baltimore if they want to win that series. And it's not going to be easy because the Orioles pitching has also been very good this year. The whole pitching staff is pitching to a 3.3 ERA. Very, very good stuff from them. And when you actually look at the pitching matchups, we got Brandon Pfaadt versus Cole Irvin in game number 1. I'm not a big Cole Irvin guy, but he's been really good this year. 2.86 ERA. John Means versus Ryan Nelson in game 2. Means hasn't pitched a ton this year, but when he did pitch, he has yet to give up an earned run. So in his very small sample size, he has been good. And then in the finale, you're going to have your ace, Zach Gallen, on the mound, go against Dean Kramer, who also very good season so far for Baltimore. 3.57 ERA. So you look at the rotation, you look at the bullpen, you look at the lineup. That's a complete team over there in Baltimore. They're doing it on every single level, every phase of the game. The Orioles are dominating. The D-backs are not doing that right now, but the D-backs starting to play a little bit better. They're coming off a sweep. They're on a 4-game winning streak. And if you can take down the Baltimore Orioles, you can at least start to believe that the season is finally starting to turn around for Arizona. Now I want to talk to you guys about Policy Genius, because Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policy Genius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help you talk through it. Talk to a team of award winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Your work life insurance policy may not offer enough protection for your family's needs. Even worse, it may not come with you if you leave your job. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policy Genius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. Let me also tell you guys about my favorite delivery service called DoorDash, because I'm a lazy fella. I don't like to step out my house. I don't like to cook food. So you know what I do? I get groceries, food. Even if I have to do shopping, I do it all on the DoorDash app. You can even use it this Mother's Day, because want to make your mom smile? Start Mother's Day with flowers or surprise her with gifts all through the DoorDash app. It has all the brands she loves delivered the very same day. Moms are a gift, so why not get her the best Mother's Day gift this year? All you have to do is go on DoorDash and order something from her favorite flower, convenience, or grocery store. This Mother's Day, if you spend $15 or more, you can get 50% off your next order. Does that not sound amazing? All you have to do is use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's code LOCKEDONMLB, and order using the DoorDash app today. Terms apply. All right. Let's get back into the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Let's talk about the biggest positive surprises that we've seen from the D-backs this season. Yesterday, we talked about the biggest negative surprises, so let's get a little bit more positive on today's podcast. The first positive thing that I want to talk about from this D-back season so far, despite the record, one thing that I've really liked is a little Jock Peterson, because I think Jock Peterson has been a perfect fit in this D-backs lineup. They were looking for a power lefty. They were looking for a guy that could play the DH position, and Jock Peterson, just perfect. He's a guy with elite plate discipline. He's been really good at knowing that strike zone. From a power standpoint, we would love some more home runs, but he still has one of the best slugging percentages on the team, right behind a Christian Walker. He has over 900 OPS. And it just feels like he never wastes an at bat. It feels like he goes up there and he just is a professional hitter. He knows when to take a ball. He knows what pitches to swing at. It feels like he's always going to give you a quality at bat anytime he's at the plate. And every now and then he'll even deliver a big crank. And I think from a personality standpoint, he fits this team perfectly. Great clubhouse and locker room guy. And the fact that he used to play on a couple of NL West teams, I can't wait till the D-backs make it to the postseason and we get to see Jock either ripping out the hearts of Padres fans or ripping out the hearts of Dodgers fans. I would be so happy if that happened. And Jock Peterson, if he has himself a big moment in the postseason, I can't wait to start dropping Jocktober on this podcast. So, Jock Peterson, we love you. You've been a great addition to this D-backs team so far, offensively as a DH, and we can't wait to see what you're going to do with the team for the rest of the season. The second thing that I've really liked so far that's been a surprise is Blaze Alexander. I know his defense has been very questionable as part of the reason he's not playing as much recently. I actually think that's a big problem for the D-backs. I think Blaze Alexander just has to play every day. I know his defense is a big liability, but I don't think he's ever going to get better at defense if we just keep, yanking him in and out the lineup. It feels like he's more conscious than ever whenever he's making defensive plays. And because of that, I think it's also affecting, if it's not affecting already, it's going to start affecting his swing, because whenever he makes a defensive mistake, now he's like, all right, I'm going to be out, the next game or the next two games. And now that takes him out of his offensive rhythm as well if he's only playing once every 3 games. And then the other options that you're replacing Blaze Alexander with is like a Pavin Smith or a Kevin Newman. I just don't think it makes much. I don't think it makes much sense. Blaze Alexander has been so good for the D-backs this season. Probably the third best D-backs hitter all year after Ketel Marte and a Christian Walker. And the fact that he does not play more, the fact that it's a question of when Blaze Alexander is playing is crazy. I get it. His defense has been a liability. There's a couple games you could point to this year where it's like, yeah, that game might have been lost because of Blaze Alexander. But I also think the fact that we're kind of killing his confidence as a defensive shortstop is kind of on us. And so if the D-backs want the best version of Blaze Alexander, I think you just have to ride the highs and lows and pray that the more reps he gets, the better he will be in the long run defensively. So I will not sit Blaze Alexander going forward. His bat, I think, is just too valuable to sit in this D-backs lineup. Number 3, surprise for me this year. How about Jake McCarthy coming back and being a positive player? There's a lot of people that don't believe in Jake McCarthy as a major leaguer. They don't think his bat is good enough on the major league level. And I definitely believe there are some question marks when it comes to a Jake McCarthy's offensive profile. He's never going to be a big slugging guy, never going to be a big power guy. But if he can just do what he's currently doing, which is a 307 average and a 370 OBP, that is all I need from him, because we know Jake McCarthy has wheels for days. And that speed is a big weapon for him, and it's going to help out this D-backs team in a big way, because base running has not been a strength of theirs this year. And to be honest, it has not been a strength of Jake McCarthy this year, because he got picked off in this series finale. And it was back-to-back games now with Jake McCarthy getting picked off? Or how many times in the last week have we seen Jake McCarthy get thrown out at first base? There's been way too many games where Jake McCarthy has been picked off this year. I do not like to see that at all. But the other things that Jake McCarthy has done at the plate, very good. His strikeout percentage below 20%. His walk rate at 9%. Really good numbers there. Jake McCarthy is still someone that I believe can be an everyday player for the Arizona Diamondbacks, especially if someone like Alek Thomas, if that bat never comes around or is never consistent, I don't mind Jake McCarthy as our right fielder. If he can still just be a solid contact hitter and get chaotic on the bases, I think that's all the D-backs need from him, and just play solid defense. Alek Thomas is always going to play elite defense, but I don't know if his offensive bat is ever going to come around. And I'm definitely taking a Jake McCarthy over a Pavin Smith in right field. I do like a Randall Grichuk, so it's probably a little bit closer between those two, but right now, I am leaning Jake McCarthy probably over Alek Thomas, assuming Thomas's bat is just never going to be consistent enough. And if it's not going to be consistent enough, I think we should ride Jake McCarthy as long as he's a 290 hitter or better. Then the final surprise from the season that has really been a positive revelation for the D-backs is Ryan Thompson just continuing to be absolutely elite, because Thompson last year for this D-backs team was fantastic. He was a late season addition to a really shaky bullpen. The D-backs picked him up, and in 13 innings pitched, Ryan Thompson allowed 1 earned run for a .69 ERA. And then you look at what Thompson has done this season: 14.2 innings pitched, a 1.23 ERA, only 2 earned runs allowed all season. And actually, after today's game, Ryan Thompson's ERA actually went down to a 1.2 over 14 innings pitched. So he's been fantastic once again this season. Just picked up out of nowhere off the waiver wire last year. He gives up no hits. He gives up no walks. He's been phenomenal this season, and he needs to be the 7th inning man moving forward, because for Torey Lovullo, there are just not enough options in the bullpen, and we cannot make it too difficult of a decision. Go with your best players, Torey Lovullo, and that means Ryan Thompson in the 7th, Kevin Ginkel in the 8th, and then Paul Sewald in the 9th inning to close it out. Now, that's it for this edition of the Locked On Diamondbacks podcast. Come back next week for more Diamondbacks news, coverage, and insight. We'll be recapping D-backs versus Orioles after the series ends. And as always, stay safe, stay healthy. Doses.